Board of County Commissioners agenda setting a work session for January 28, 2020. We'll start with introductions. I'm John Hutchings, and to my right is?
Ty Menser.
My left?
Gary Edwards.
And then?
Robin Courts.
Robin Campbell.
Romero Chavez.
Thomasina Cooper. La Bonita Bolmar. Katie Johnson. And Megan Porter.
Good. Thank you all for being here. We're going to go through the Board of Health agenda, the BoCC draft agenda for this evening, and then a whole host of things. So we will start with the Board of Health. Yes, sir.
We have a homeless strategy update.
That's
Commissioner,
right.
agenda.
Is that why it's at the first thing at the top? Keely Marino, thank you for being here.
Good morning.
I'm going to slow down. I will slow down.
Keely Marino, Public Health and Social Services. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. Very glad to report on the point-in-time activities being incredibly successful last week. We're excited. We've heard a lot of feedback from individuals who have participated as volunteers in previous point-in-time counts, giving us a big thumbs up that it was very well organized and super successful. We had all of the activities that we had planned throughout the county in Nisqually and Yelm all went off, it seems, without a hitch. We had a lot of excellent return on surveys from our people with lived experience who were going into the encampments all over the county. Commissioner Edwards was able to attend the luncheon in Yelm, and I heard that was quite successful, so thank you for doing that. So we're excited to get return on those surveys. We still have surveys out until Thursday this week, as some of our efforts were 7-day counts. So we'll be getting those surveys back on Thursday, and we'll be able to start getting that data in. So we're looking towards mid-March for our data to be out once Commerce approves Faith Adicot's efforts to deduplicate by hand the data on the surveys, which she was able to do in 2018 within a 1% margin of error, which is really great. So be looking forward for that to those data points coming out.
That's pretty quick.
Yeah.
That's a quick turnaround.
Yeah, she's determined.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Also, I attended yesterday, the City of Olympia did move forward on clearing the encampment under the 4th Ave Bridge. There were only 4 individuals left living under the bridge, and advocates were working to help them get their items together, and City of Olympia staff to ensure that they were moving on so they could continue clearing. A couple, I believe, was going to go to the mitigation site, and the 2 other individuals, I'm not sure where they ended up. The remaining individuals under the bridge, due to a swift action with First Christian, again, with Pastor Amy and her congregation and her board of directors, took in 11 of those residents. Wow. And they are living under I went past there yesterday. There's an individual in this community who volunteered to build these pretty incredible structures that are wood frames with the material that the bulletin boards are made of, so that really thick plastic. So there's 6 tents tucked away in the back corner, and then a community tent. The congregation has agreed to keep them there and support them for 18 months, so they're not having to leave in the middle of the winter next year. They're working on how to support those folks in terms of volunteer staffing, et cetera. The City of Olympia is providing fencing, porta potties, garbage service, as well as hand washing station under in their encampment area. So once again, First Christian stepping up to the bat and taking on more of our folks in the community that are houseless. I think that's about it. Those were 2 really huge activities over the last week. Mm-hmm.
Any questions or comments?
Keely, what was the driving motivation to clear the camp there? Was it because I'd heard stuff about the state and concern about the structure of the bridge versus proximity to water and the sound, and I mean what was the thing that made that one the one that had to be cleared versus any other one?
I think everything that you just said. My understanding is that they did have pressure from the state. They did have pressure around water quality. The Squaxin Island tribe also came to the City of Olympia and asked them to move towards moving folks from under the bridge, as it's a violation of their treaty rights, as it's impacting the water, as far as I understand. Okay. So it was a number of things that were culminating that that made that the first encampment to be moved.
Which they wanted to do in September.
Yes, there was a motion. And, yeah.
I think I'm good.
Go ahead, Gary.
Have you heard from any of your people that you work with about individuals that have been possibly removed from their own property and because maybe there was a code violation? I'm specifically referring to our code that will not allow citizens to live on their own property in an RV. And I know we had a recent incident in which our enforcement people were talking with an individual, telling him that he had to move, and it was kind of a sad scenario. His motorhome was adequate, or I guess it was a fifth wheel, and he's hooked up to sewer and hooked up to water. But his prior single wide had burnt down and he hadn't had insurance on it, and he doesn't have enough money to fix it. So if we enforce our code, then he parks down along the lake, and we just add one more to it. And I'm wondering if maybe we don't need to revamp our code maybe at some point to address that. I don't know if that's come up in any of your discussions.
That has not come up for me in any of my discussions, but I will ask around. I'm meeting with the City of Olympia today and just see if they've heard of any of those stories coming up.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I did forget to mention that we will be supporting the jungle encampment with a 6-yard dumpster that will be going in by the end of this week. The business that is adjacent to the jungle has agreed to lock it up at night, so there will be somebody to unlock it at night and unlock it in the morning, and they just volunteered to do that, so that's great. So that should be going in by the end of this week.
Okay. Romero, did you have something you wanted to jump in on?
Yeah, I'm wondering if you have, you talk about the state and working with the City of Olympia and cleaning under the 4th Avenue Bridge. Any updates on, that you know of, the state is taking action on enforcing the parking on the chutes?
So I've been to several listening sessions with the Department of Enterprise Services, and I know that they're still working on their rulemaking. They're meeting with several stakeholder groups. I know they've met with about 6 already. They are not speeding through that process. They're taking their time. So all I know is that they're still working on trying to come up with a solution that doesn't just kick the can down the road. But that's as far as I know.
As I said before, I'll get back to you. As I said before, that if folks are looking for the government to solve the homeless issue, they're going to be sorely disappointed. Because just as you said, the faith-based community is coming in, stepping up again. Philanthropists, volunteers, other nonprofits, and the government's going to take a whole host of people coming together. So I was glad to hear about the church stepping up. I read in the paper that the removal of the folks from under the 4th Ave Bridge, that 15 of them had already been to the mitigation site in Olympia and did not want to return because they've had some negative experiences. Do you know what those were?
I don't know what those individual unique experiences were. I know that, you know, they have behavioral expectations at the mitigation site. They also have curfews, et cetera, no visitor policy, that kind of thing. So it could be any number of those things. It could be behavioral, it could just be preference.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you knew if it was behavioral, or I don't like the rules, or if it was specific incidences with bullying or whatnot.
I would have to make a lot of guesses, so.
Just, okay, so you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Are you following any of the activity, maybe at the legislature, with the auxiliary dwelling unit situation?
I'm monitoring some of the bills, but I've been pretty distracted with the PIT. I'm actually heading to a session after this to just listen in on some of the homeless and housing bills that are being put forth, so.
I do feel that government can play a role in helping by thinking about, well, the cost of housing now is nearing, it's over 30% now because of government activity, whatever that is, whether it's taxes or impact fees or permitting or zoning, whatever, all the issues that we tack on. And so I do think we can play a role in some fashion. I don't know if that's going to be working with nonprofits or those that are working with disabled veterans. Something needs to be done to alleviate that escalating high cost of government interference in building homes. So I think if we get something going there, it will help.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree.
And Carrie Retland and Colin DeForest are to be patted on the back and applauded for the work they do.
Yes,
in Olympia.
absolutely, absolutely.
That's it. Anything further? All right, Keely, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll have a cup of coffee or something. All right, now we're going to review the Board of Health agenda.
All right. This is reviewing agenda for today, Tuesday, January 28th. And 3 p.m. we will call the special meeting to order and approve the agenda. Opportunity of public to address Board of Health. Any items there to be commented
Not
upon?
that I'm aware of.
Okay.
No.
We'll see what happens there, and then we'll have department items, which is our sole item on today's special meeting agenda, and it is a resolution for appointment of interim health officers. Turn it over to our Director of Public Health, Shelley Slaughter.
Good morning, Commissioners. Again, Shelley Slaughter, Director of Public Health and Social Services, and also your Administrative Officer for the Board of Health. And with me here today is...
Lydia Hodgkinson, Clerk of the Board of Health.
So, yes, we do have a special meeting scheduled for 3 o'clock today of the Board of Health to consider Resolution H1 2020. If you will recall, on December 7th, you passed Resolution H3 2019. That resolution appointed alternate health officers, and we received subsequent legal advice that we needed to change some of the language in the resolution. So this resolution reflects a couple different updates. So the primary being that you will see that it appoints interim health officers as opposed to alternate health officers. It also includes plural of health officers. As the work plan that I presented to you on December 7th described how we would provide coverage while we are recruiting for a new health officer since Dr. Wood retired on November 30th of 2019, and we have been in the midst of a recruitment process, which we expect to have completed in the next about 6 weeks or so. We do have applicants for that position. You have some tentative meetings on your calendar to conduct those interviews. So in the meantime, we have 4 health officers that have generally been covering us for Thurston County. This resolution also includes an update to one of the physicians from Seattle-King County that's providing tuberculosis coverage. The previous resolution included Dr. Chris Spitters. Dr. Masa Narita is the physician from Seattle-King County that is currently overseeing that program and able to provide us coverage. The section 1 that refers to those physicians as well also includes his or her designee to be added because at times, especially during public health emergencies, there's often other backup health officers that we need to rely on to cover the work. So Dr. Kathy Lofi is our state health officer in the state of Washington, continues to provide coverage for us for any communicable disease matters. Dr. Masanarita is covering our tuberculosis from Seattle-King County. Dr. Dan Stein from Mason County is covering all of our vital records. And Dr. Alan Melnick from Clark County is covering for our environmental health. So this reaffirms some previous decisions that you have made and essentially cleans up just some legal language so we can have ultimate transparency and clarity to the public. Any questions?
I don't.
No, sir?
So we've got use of the term interim rather than alternate. We're naming the different officers, and we've updated one of the names. And is there more?
Those are the substantial changes from H3 2019 and including the plural health officers. I think that, one other thing is just Elizabeth Petrich, our counsel, included some more specific RCWs. So we had previously just referenced 7005. This one includes all the specific relevant statutes for this resolution.
Okay. Then that should be straightforward.
You know, I like the action item. Rather than having to read the whole resolution, just move to approve it.
It'll be nice and easy for you.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, that's it for this agenda. We will adjourn then.
All right, thank you very much. See you this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll move into this evening's Board of County Commissioner meeting. It takes place at,
No,
We did
Commissioner.
that yesterday.
I'm sorry, we did that yesterday.
You reviewed
This
that
is for
agenda
next Tuesday,
yesterday.
'cause I thought, wait, the time's wrong.
This is for next Tuesday.
All right. Takes a minute to get back into the routine. So this is for Tuesday, February the 4th. We'll call the meeting to order at 2 p.m. And Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Edwards, approval of the agenda and board meeting minutes from today, and then an opportunity for the public to address the board. You aware of things?
No, for next week, but I'm sure we'll receive some public testimony on that.
Okay. Are you aware of anything from public interest, public comment?
No, sir.
No.
Okay. Then the county manager's update.
I will follow up with any testimony you might receive this evening, if need be.
All right, now we have consent items, agenda item number 3. Consent items A, B, C, D, and E. The first one is 3A, Human Resources, a collective bargaining agreement.
Yeah,
Approval.
Commissioners, for your consideration is to approve the collective bargaining agreement between the county and the Association of the County Deputy Prosecuting Attorneys. As you have approved previous contracts with represented employees, this mirrors the parameters of those contracts, meaning it's for a 3-year term, and that really has put us some save a lot of staffing time rather than the negotiating every year. So this is a 3-year term that begins on January 1st, 2020, and ends on December 31st, 2022. As similar to other contracts, this contract includes a cost of living increase of 2.4% in 2020, and for 2021 and 2022 is tied to the CPI. And also has some sideboards on the side, so a minimum of 1.5 and a maximum of 2.5 cost of living increase. And with the difference in 2022, that will be from 1% to 2%, a little bit lesser. And again, that is consistent with other contracts that you have already approved. And it does give a little bit of latitude whether the financial situation of the county is not there. Also, you can probably exercise your legislative authority when the time comes.
All right, anything? Anything on that?
No, sir.
All right, 3B, Public Defense, reclassification.
As you heard from Patrick O'Connor, the Director of Office of Public Defense, his office is getting a lot of cases which requires to assess some of the current staffing levels that he needs and maybe realign some of the classifications to better use his current staff. So they have gone through this process. They have worked with Human Resources. Their proposal before you is to consider reclassification of an administrative assistant to an executive assistant. And that will really give a little more latitude for Patrick O'Connor to utilize this position for the betterment of his department. This particular action has a budget impact. It goes from $5,652 to $6,257 a month. That will be $605 a month increase, or just about 11%. He's not asking for a review on the budget, because he can absorb this. And again, what I give you is the maximum. That doesn't mean that will be, if you approve this reclassification, the cost increase will be immediately implemented.
Okay, anything on that?
No, sir.
And that will be absorbed within their budget.
So you may recall last year, and it has been under the direction to have all the departments, they may see or have what we call delinquent accounts, to come and ask the board to retire those accounts. In this particular case, the Department of Public Works has submitted a request for you to retire a total amount of $10,209 of uncollectible fees. This is in relation to Thurston County Code Policy 3055, and also the Procurement Policy 3055 they also approved. And this is really to avoid this uncollectible debt. So rather than not to deal with a balloon amount 2, 3, 4 years down the road. And this is really the intent to come on a yearly basis. So in this particular case, the total cost of $10,209 is related to uncollectible fees from the solid waste side of it. There has been 65 customers that have not been able to pay that amount, that 62 customers since 2013, and prior to that amounts to just about $5,200 of uncollectible fees. There is also a few businesses that have gone on bankrupt, and we have not been able to locate some of those businesses in order for us to collect the debt. I guess this is old, and we're trying to clean that up. And I can give you the names of the businesses, but I would rather keep it
I think we
to
don't
respect
need to air that.
But and again, is what I call is in addition to the 65 individual customers, we have close to a handful of businesses. They have gone bankrupt, or they have moved out of state, or unable to collect. And the total cost is $10,209.
Commissioner Edwards, any questions or comments?
I guess I'd have one question. Out of the sewer and water rates that we collect, do they ever attach a blight on the title of the properties where that happens, or so that we can collect it at some point, maybe at a point of sale? Or do they just end up, it's too costly to do that, and this is a better way to do business?
Yeah, I don't know if we can put a lien on the property, because sometimes it's rental individuals.
Right, but somebody owns it.
Right. In this particular case, it's nothing related to sewer rates. It's only solid waste.
Okay, so this
This
it's
is
not
solid
water
waste.
and sewer on
At this point,
this.
no. The reference that I made on the document is related to the policy that includes solid waste,
Okay.
water, and sewer. This $10,209.22 are related to delinquent solid waste accounts.
And what impact does that $10,000 of non-collectible, how does that affect our budget?
It affects our budget by
As
10.
revenue? It
as-
shows it as a less amount of revenue coming in?
On the amount, yeah.
Is that similar to what happened with the juvenile collection that we went back for 20 or 30
Yeah,
years?
similar.
But there's there's not, we never had it, so there's not a adverse effect on the budget, is there? That's
We
what I'm trying-
reported it as revenue, though,
So
didn't we?
it is revenue that
Yeah.
we had assumed we would receive, that is booked as, it's booked as a receivable. This is accounting jargon.
Right.
So it's booked as a receivable, and now we're writing it off. So it looks like our revenue that we were depending on is going to be $10,000 less in these utility accounts.
Okay, and that's the same thing that happened on that juvenile
Yes,
thing, too,
to a
same
much
thing.
larger degree.
Yeah.
Yep.
As you may recall, at that case, at juvenile court, it was an impact to the end of fund balance by just about $1 million, because it was, we retired.
Of $1 million.
$1 million.
Yeah,
If we retired those delinquent accounts, they went 15 years plus.
or more, yeah.
And I think all of us learned that lesson. Did we have any delinquent accounts just to retire so we can manage those accounts? Because
Okay.
that's always will be part of the business,
Right.
delinquent accounts. We can do as much effort as we can, collection agencies and everything else. Some of those are just uncollectible.
And we should be staying on top of them. So one of the good things is, Public Works is on top of this. They come forward every year you should be seeing these every year about this time, write-off of bad debt.
But the budget is based on those revenue assumptions.
It is, but if we stay on top of this, we'll never have that big,
Big balloon.
Big
Yeah,
balloon, got it,
yeah.
okay.
But, so, it's coming every year, but we're looking at accounts that are not last year's accounts, right? We're looking at things that are, is it like some rolling amount from the past that we're
Yes.
moving forward?
Right.
yeah,
And so we're talking about things that are 5 years plus old? Okay.
easily.
Yeah, so next year will be probably 2014.
We're just chunking it up
Yeah.
into
Right.
smaller pieces.
We make every attempt over a period of time to collect on these accounts, and at some point, you determine you'll never get the money, and that's the time to write it off.
All right, 3D, Treasurer's Office, uncollectible personalty.
Speaking of
taxes.
uncollectible accounts, this is again from the Treasurer's Office, and the Treasurer has been very systematic, coming every year to make sure that we retire those accounts related to uncollectible personal property and taxes related to this. So this is related to RCW 8456-240, related to uncollectible personal property and mobile home taxes covering only in the year 2019, because they need to close the books. So the uncollectible taxes include 8 mobile homes, and the tax varies on those mobile homes from $12 to $454. And the reason as to why they have not been able to collect those taxes in those mobile homes, those have been destroyed. So the asset has been destroyed. There is no way we can follow up on collecting those taxes. Also, there are businesses, they have closed, they have gone bankrupt, and those are close to 27 businesses. And the taxes associated with those closed businesses varies from $11.67 to $854.46. The total of that is $6,444 of the 27 businesses. They have not been able to collect due to closures, bankruptcy. Those are the 2 main issues. And if you add the 8 properties, the mobile homes, which amounts to $824, that will be the total of $7,266.54.
Commissioner?
Good, thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Romero. And then 3E is the financial services, the vouchers.
Yep.
And any questions or comments on those, or polls?
I guess the only follow-up question I'd have is from yesterday. Did we find out?
I left a voicemail. I have not received feedback yet.
Thank you.
Okay. For the audience, you want to refresh what that was?
Title search
Yeah.
issues that are, to find out if the cost of the title search is being covered by the sale of these properties that we're trying to put back on the tax rolls.
That was a good question. All right, anything? Nope. All right, takes us to the county manager, and appointment of constatement committee.
So the next 3 items are related to the courthouse and administrative regional buildings. Proposition number 1, the majority of the board passed back in November under ordinance 15840. So prior to submitting to the auditor, the Board of County Commissioners and the commissioners need to make a concerted effort to select 2 committees of 3 members each. One is to those individuals to write a con statement. They will be added to the ballot measure, and also a committee, they will write a pro statement. So item 4A for your consideration is to appoint Mr. John Pettit, Mr. Glenn Morgan, and Mr. Kevin O'Sullivan to write the con statement, to be part of the con statement committee. They will write an opposition statement for the Thurston County Courthouse Administrative Services Bill in Proposition number 1. And again, they will be included on the April 28, 2020 special election.
Anything?
No, sir.
Okay. 4B, the pro statement.
On the same, however, on the draft agenda that you have before you is a bunch of excess. because I have not received a formal confirmation. And I received an email yesterday with 3 names. And I believe those individuals involved on that selection, they're going to be reaching out to those 3 individuals to confirm. And I did ask them, they please give me a confirmation before the end of the week, because we need to fill this. Because if you don't have a formal request, which Mr. Pettit did to me a couple of weeks ago, for the pro committee, then you will not be able to appoint the pro committee to write a pro statement to the ballot measure. So this item will be removed. So the next step in the process will be for the auditor, when we submit the resolution, to select 3 individuals that could write a pro statement related to the ballot measure.
Okay, I've already heard of one confirmation, but it will come forth.
So I'm a little confused by that. If the pro committee, what if there was no pro committee? I thought there was another option that we would have the power to appoint people that we thought were appropriate.
When I received an email yesterday, they gave me the 3 names, and they asked me to wait until they can confirm if those 3 individuals will be willing to participate.
My point is, if they didn't exist or they just failed to do it, why would it go straight to the auditor? Why wouldn't we have to retain the power?
That's my suggestion. If there is none, certainly you can select who you think is appropriate, and that's well within your purview.
Okay.
I'm saying if there is no names related on this item, I have to take it out.
Sure. And then what's our deadline then for having those names submitted to the auditor?
My goal is for you to take an action, consider taking an action next Tuesday. That will be February 4th, along with item 4C, which is next on your agenda. And at that point, I will submit on your behalf to the county auditor. The deadline is February 28th, and I don't want to wait until that time. I just want to give a little bit of room, just in case something needs to occur.
Got it.
Commissioner?
No, sir.
All right, thank you. 4C, amending an ordinance.
So let me take you back to November 12, 2019, when the majority of the board passed ordinance 15840, where the majority of the board approved to put the proposition number 1, which is the Thurston County Courthouse and Administrative Regional Building, proposition number 1, before the voters on the special election of April 28, 2020. Under this resolution, let me read you section number 5. And section number 5 has a final dollar rate proposed on the ballot title. As you may recall, the draft language of the ballot title has a lot of blanks, if you recall that. And it states in section 5 of the majority of the board approving this ordinance, because the levy calculations are based on 2020 assessed values. And because these values will not be known until January of 2020, the board shall take another action prior to February 28, 2020 to set the final dollar rate for the proposed ballot title. So the proposal before you is to do exactly that, is to set in the final dollar rate in the proposed ballot title, and that will be in which you put all the numbers that is needed on the proposition number 1, and that will be submitted to the county auditor as soon as the board takes an action on this. So it's follow-up to we were already tracked and that needs to be done.
Anything?
No.
Anything?
No, sir.
Okay. Then we move on to reporting out on our commissions and board meetings, and county manager going through our calendar. And then we move into a public hearing. And the public hearing is a CPED, Community Planning and Economic Development, regarding plat extension amendments.
Yeah, Commissioners, for your consideration, this public hearing was scheduled to be held on January 7th. However, we had a little bit of a miscommunication as to how we needed to post the official public notice for this hearing. So you follow up with an action to reset the public hearing for February the 4th, 2020. And this is related to amendments to Title 28. And Title 28 the proposal allows for flexibility as to how the preliminary plat extensions can be implemented, giving a little bit of flexibility to the developer community, because right now it's so restrictive as to how many extensions and the time in which those extensions can be implemented. Again, this proposal provides a little more flexibility. And again, this is for you to receive public testimony on this proposal. And at that point, depending on, I will prepare a couple of options for you, move to public, to close the public hearing, and an optional action for you to consider approving the ordinance, depending on the public testimony. But the second motion will not be required for you, depending on the public testimony.
Okay, anything?
No, sir.
Anything? Okay. Then that concludes that day. So now we're moving into proclamations and awards.
Good morning again, La Bonita Bomar, Clerk of the Board. Under proclamations and awards, the only proclamation that we have is coming up this evening, and that's for African American History Month. I don't have any others for February as of yet. If I do, I'll be sure and give you notice as far ahead as I can. Okay. Under boards and commissions, this list is the same as we have reviewed before. I am waiting for staff to have their meetings with their committees. The Fair Board and the Agriculture Advisory Board meet at the end of the month. I've talked with staff and they'll be reviewing the application that you see before you for the Fair, Jan Gilliam and Thomas Watson for the Agriculture Advisory Board, and they'll let me know what their recommendations are. So hopefully by February the 4th, you will have an idea of where they're standing on these appointments. And that's all I have at this time.
And they are at the end of the month?
Yes.
Thank you. Anything? Good. Thank you, Lon. That was easy. PIO check-in.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Megan Porter, Public Information Supervisor. Just had two quick updates for you. We're still on schedule to update the audio for this room and for room 152 the week of February 17th. So we're good to go on that. And then also wanted to update you on the website RFP process. I held a meeting with the web coordinators on January 16th, and we went over the proposed statement of work and timeline, and there was a few line item questions that we wanted to go and ask the group about. So we are currently working on that contract negotiation and hope to have it in front of you within the next month or so for approval. So we're moving forward on that project.
Good.
Any questions?
Commissioner, questions,
No, sir.
comments?
No, sir.
Commissioner Tai?
So I'm interested in the messaging that we may be working on or should be working on with respect to the HCP.
Okay.
Because I had a meeting with the Olympian Master Builders rep who they had no clue what we'd done. I kind of outlined it for them. And it was a really good conversation, and I think but that's a really unique opportunity to have, basically an hour with, somebody one-on-one with a commissioner. That's not going to happen to the rest of the 300,000 citizens. So we need to think about how we need to communicate to the key stakeholder groups kind of where we're at with this now that we have our draft. And I know there was a press release being worked on or something, but I talked to another person who's involved in this yesterday, and they hadn't seen that or weren't sure if it was even available, like was the draft available. I had thought, I had asked about disseminating it from the time we voted on it before I'm looking at Ramiro, the transmittal letter went out, and you had said at that point, once the transmittal letter goes out, it'll be available. So I told this person that they should be able to find it, but I wasn't able to tell them exactly where. And
Yeah, I touched base after you and I had a conversation with the director of CPED. So he is aware of that, and he's building on his strategy. So there is what we call a story online that we're going to be publishing here shortly. They really outlines, specifically what the nuances of the elements of the revised HCP. And also that will be making available to all the industry, just to make sure they're tracking where they can find that information. So I believe that should be done, if it wasn't done probably this week. Help me out.
Let me check with the director of CPED and check. We did send a news release out about it on January 15th, the day that the submittal was sent as well.
Okay.
So a news release did go out and it was posted on social media, but
Yeah,
obviously
not
that's
everybody
not
sees
going to
it,
reach
yeah.
everyone. So I will check in with Josh and see where we are in finalizing that. We have a draft ready, so they were just going to do a few little adjustments to it and.
But I think it's point well taken, so we need to take
Yes,
an extra step just to make sure that the key industry is informed as to what that is.
Yeah, I mean, there's that sort of passive, like, it's put it out there, but I think we know who the stakeholders are, and we should be promoting the message
Yeah, on
specifically, hey, make sure, because, depending on how this is explained, this should be a huge win for us, but it could turn the opposite way if people don't understand the elements, the key elements. So,
On point.
I will follow up with Josh.
thank you.
Is that it?
That was it for me.
So thank you for the update on the audio. That's encouraging to hear. And the Thurston Community Media taping that we did, Meet the Commissioner, is that out yet? Is that being,
It's not out yet. I will check with Brian to see if we've received the draft.
is that just played for a certain period of time, or is it played sporadically throughout the year?
They will play it for the month, and then if we ask them, they can sporadically do it throughout the year. It will be available on our YouTube channel,
Okay.
and we can share it whenever we want to, and it's always available on our YouTube channel.
So whenever they do put it out, it's good for a month from that date they put it out?
Until the next show is ready. So
Okay, so it could be 2
could be a
weeks.
little bit more than a month. It could be-
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Didn't he say it was early February target, Brian?
Yeah,
Does that sound right?
yes.
Okay.
All right. And last year, we had at the end of the year, there was a total number of hours that were allotted to us. How'd we end up?
We have 1,700 hours allotted. We used 1,750 or so.
Whoa, good.
So we were over a little bit.
Okay, does that cost us or what? No, good. So it's January, we're right on target.
Yeah.
Okay,
And there has been a big shift because just 2 years ago, there was a lot of production hours left on the table.
Yeah.
So
There
there's
sure was.
a good thing. There's a good thing.
Yeah, it averaged around.
We get rollover
800
hours?
No, we cannot roll over it.
Hey, what?
It averaged around 800 hours. So last
Okay.
year was the first year that we used all of it. The year prior to that, we used about 1,500. But before that, it averaged around 800 hours.
That is a very, very good thing.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Is there anything that shows the viewership on any of that? I mean, is there any way to know how many people or who we're reaching or where?
So the short answer is no. TC Media doesn't have the capability of getting the viewership numbers for their actual channel. We can tell you how many people view our YouTube videos, because we post all of ours on YouTube, but that gives you a very small segment of the people who are watching. Because I sit on the TC Media board, and that's something that I want to push, is that we do another viewership survey so we can actually see the demographics of who's watching, if people are watching, what the value added is. So that's something I'm going to be pushing, is that we
How about
actually spend some money to do
on
that.
YouTube? What kind of numbers are paying attention?
Pull one up. Give me just a second to get that. From the video on the coroner's office, which was 2 months ago, there was 51 views on our YouTube channel. I can give another example. Salmon restoration, there was 147 views, and that was from 2 months ago. Commissioner Rivers. Medic One celebrates, oh, that's a different one, no. Medic One, what did he do, Medic One? I don't remember.
Wasn't me.
It wasn't you. Gary, Commissioner Edwards did Medic One, correct? There was 45 views, and that was from 4 months ago. So depending on the topic, we can see people are viewing it. The average time they watched it was about 17 minutes, so they're not watching the full video. So it would be really great to get some actual solid numbers of who's watching it and
On GCN.
on the actual channel.
Right.
And because they also don't, they have a video on demand setup. It only tells you who's going to that webpage, not each individual video, so we
Okay.
can't get numbers from there on demand either. So that's something that I'm hoping that as the board we look at.
And I asked, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking.
And I asked Brian how many hits, we're tracking how many hits we get on our website, the county website. And I believe he reported back, I don't recall what he reported back, but is it something we track on a regular basis to see if the hits are going up? People clicking on the website?
We can. It's something we can, it's very easy for us to get that information.
Okay.
We have an analytics system in place where we can easily go on there.
So I just asked him a couple of weeks ago, so I don't know if he's worked on that or not.
Well, so I have the numbers for 2019. We had 161,000 visits for the year, and then 227,571 page views. So 161 individuals came to our page. They may have come multiple times, and that's what results in the 227 views. So it was viewed 227,000 times by 161,000 people.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah,
that's impressive.
yeah, it's pretty good.
All right.
It'll get better once we have our new website.
No doubt.
It'll be much easier for people to find.
Could I ask one more question?
Certainly.
Do you coordinate at all with, like Olympia and Beyond or something, so that that information can be passed on to individuals interested in Thurston County that they're thinking of moving from New York? They might want to come out here. So they get to review all that stuff on YouTube? Is that the way it works? Or do you have a coordinated effort with them on their webpage so that if you're interested in county government, they can go to this site and click and see what we're doing?
Not necessarily, but let me reach out to Shauna at the Visitor and Convention Bureau and see if there's something that we can work on to collaborate with that message a little bit more.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Megan. So we have a legislative update coming up with 4 full pages and there's some other stuff. Let's take a break now because I'm going to color it 10 to 10. Let's come back at 10 o'clock. Give you 12 minutes. Thank you. All right, that's promised. It's gonna come to the back. This is continuing on with the January 28, 2020 work session. And now we're moving into the legislative update. And our county manager has a plethora of pending.
What I was hoping to do today, Commissioners, unless you have any questions, now go back to some of the bills you already reviewed, which is on your reports are highlighted with some of a gray area. I was hoping to start on page number 3, if that is acceptable by the board.
Starting on page 3?
Yeah.
All right.
So beginning with House Bill 1979, that is concerning the establishment of reasonable surface water flow levels. The brief summary of this bill provides that minimum in-stream flow adopted by the Department of Ecology may not exceed the highest non-flood documented flow during the same month that has occurred at any time during the previous 50 years as reported by the United States Geological Survey. And also this bill directs the Director of the Department of Ecology to immediately repeal any in-stream flow rule where the minimum flows exceeded the highest non-flood documented flow during the same month that has occurred at any time in the last 5 years, contrary to the U.S. Geological Survey.
That's as clear as mud.
It's clear as mud.
Yeah.
And this is what it does. It creates a little more flexibility in terms of the minimum inflows, in-stream flows, how the Department of Ecology outlines the requirements. And WASAC is supportive of this bill, and I recommend you do the same. I really didn't get the chance to look at the consequence of this. It seems to be a little more related to the Department of Ecology, and I didn't see any impacts to the county, but any actions by the Department of Ecology certainly will have an impact on the county. So that's number 1.
I vote neutrality. It's way too complicated for me to comprehend at this point.
It is for me.
That's fair.
So, yeah.
Okay, neutral.
Thank you for that. Just jump in over these
Yeah.
topics, jump in if you have something.
So the next bill that I have is House Bill 2285. It's elevating road maintenance and preservation and transportation planning. It requires state transportation agencies to perform their powers, duties, and functions with preservation and safety as the preeminent priority among the state transportation system policy goals. This raises a concern, at least from my perspective, as well as WASAC, because it doesn't emphasize the need to concentrate also on expanding the system to address capacity. What this bill does, at least from my review, narrows down the activities related to transportation that needs to be done only for operations and maintenance, leaving on the secondary, perhaps on the third role, increasing the capacity of the system. Which is, it is unusual to have this on a bill, because that is more of a, I believe, an operation discretion by the Department of Transportation as well as the local agencies. So because of that, I recommend that as a concern to this bill.
Have we had any input from regional planning or from our own county engineering?
No, but WASAC is concerned about this bill as well.
So when it says elevating, what does that mean? It just
So put it as a priority.
it doesn't limit our ability to spend the money or set other priorities. It just says that you have to put more of a weight on that factor.
More of an emphasis, but if I read the bill, it's very prescriptive as to what that is. And it really narrows down the executive branch as to how that needs to be taken action. So it seems to be very prescriptive, at least from my point of view. Really, I don't know why this bill came as a potential legislative action, since this is a prerogative of, individuals who manages the transportation system based on the needs as to how they need to prioritize the resources they have.
And I was taking notes when you were writing, or when you were speaking, but I understand you said it only covers O&M and not capacity.
Well, emphasizes.
Emphasizes. Okay,
And the concern is perhaps doesn't emphasize capacity needs.
thank you.
So if you'd like to change, let me know. House Bill 2411, that is preventing suicide. This bill requires advanced suicide prevention training for certain mental health professionals. It requires optometrists to complete a one-time training in suicide assessment, treatment, and management, and requires veterinarian and veterinarian technicians to complete a suicide prevention training.
What's the optometrist, did you say, and
And
veterinarian?
veterinarian.
What do they have in common? I'm kind of curious.
That is a good question, and let me read the details of this. The second training for psychologists, marriage and family therapists, mental health counselor, advanced social workers, independent clinical social worker, and associated advanced or independent clinical social worker must either be an advanced training focused on suicide management. That's related to the first part, all the doctors, right? One-time training, optometrists are added to a one-time training requirements for suicide assessment, treatment, and prevention. Because I believe when individuals go to an optometrist, they need to be aware of some of the signs of suicide.
Does every other doctor get it? I mean, do they already get the
Oh,
training?
veterinarian puts an animal
No.
down, check on the status of the animal.
So the veterinarians, so beginning July 1st, 2020, all veterinarians and veterinarian technicians must complete a one-time suicide prevention training by the Veterinarian Board of Governors. The training must include recognize that veterinarians treat animal patients and have limited interaction with animal patient owners. So it's that relationship between the owners and the pets.
I don't see why, that's an imposition on small businesses that are going to have to do what? I mean, go somewhere and take a class?
And the class needs to be
recorded.
approved by, in this case, by the Veterinary Board of Governors, which is the association who governs that.
I'm happy to stay neutral on this one.
Yeah, I'd stay
Okay.
neutral on that too.
Yep.
Unless our Director of Public Health wants to tell us that that's critical to, I know we have suicide issues in the county, but amongst youth.
School counselors, let's put something in there that makes sense. Gee, Christmas.
I can
For
give
all
you
parents.
I can give you who's
All parents
sponsoring.
must.
I can give you who's sponsoring the bill. You may want to reach out to them.
For any medical, okay.
Representatives Orwell, Cliftoff, Gilden, actually quite a few. Levitt, Paul, Cody, Davis, Paulette, Goodman, Willie, Dolio, and Morgan are the sponsors of this training. The next bill is House Bill 2506, and this bill requires the Department of Natural Resources to provide at least 72-hour notice before any meeting of the Merrill-led Advisory Committee. Requires advisory committee meetings notices to meet certain requirements and notifications of special meetings under the OPMA. Pretty simple bill. It really requires when this committee meets to have a 72 hours in advance and be part of the Open Public Meetings Act.
So I'm taking there's no notice now, or is it only like 24 or 48 hours?
No, it's an
No
ad
notice.
hoc, I believe. They
Okay.
want to put a little more structure on that.
I'm okay with that.
Any change on suggestion? Okay. The next bill for you is 2507, addressing illicit discharges of wastewater pollution. Requires cities and counties, their municipal stormwater permits holders to develop a program to prevent illicit discharges from recreational vehicles and other motor vehicles likely to have a wastewater storage capacity. Also requires cities with populations over 600,000 to make low-cost vehicle wastewater pump-out facilities. So it's related to, similar to what the state provides. And make it available as well with private services. Authorizes the use of a city and county stormwater fees to coordinate and provide low-cost and no-cost wastewater disposal services for vehicles used in residences. So, and that is key. What this legislation allows for the stormwater fees to subsidize some of the disposal of the stormwater. And also authorizes the Department of Ecology and the Washington State Patrol to enforce restrictions on the parking of wastewater containing vehicles that represent a substantial potential to pollute underwater and water quality. That is related to what is going on the Deschutes Parkway. But at least my read is a little bit of a concern because it's more than just that. And I guess the first part is to have develop a program to prevent illicit discharges from recreational vehicles that puts another onus to the county. So my suggestion is to be concerned about this. But House Bill 2526 and Senate Bill 6314. This eliminate penalties for delinquent properties, and this is related to protecting taxpayers from home foreclosure. The summary of this bill is the 3% penalty of the amount of delinquent taxes accrued as of June 1st of the year in which the tax is due, and the additional penalty of 8% of the amount due on December 1st are eliminated. And that is an attempt to help with foreclosure activities. And any penalties assessed prior to the effective date of this act is still be due payable to the penalties and to the county. Suggestions for you to support that. It gives you flexibility to exercise any type of
Is the companion bill exactly the same?
Excuse me, what? What?
Is the companion bill exactly the same wording? Yeah. There's no change at all?
It's similar, but I think the Senate bill is a little more prescriptive.
All right.
House Bill 2549, and that is integrating salmon recovery efforts with the Growth Management Act. It makes salmon recovery a goal of the GMA. It requires cities and counties planning under GMA framework to develop a salmon and a steelhead comprehensive plan element. Establishes a process for approval of a city of a county salmon, county salmon of a steelhead GMA comprehensive plan elements by the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and adoption as an alternative proposal by the jurisdictions that includes Fish and Wildlife. So the concern that I have for you is it creates yet another element on the GMA, and we continue to add elements to the GMA, so which it will require a lot of time and effort to have that. And what adds into this scenario, now the Department of Fish and Wildlife is the one who has to approve that element of GMA if this passes. So at least from my point of view, as well as WASAC, that is a concern.
This bill and the next bill were discussed at Salmon Recovery Council, and they were both, so they're both attempts to address recommendations from the ORCA task force, but there wasn't consensus in the Salmon Recovery Council as to whether these were good bills or not. The tribes don't think they're well fleshed out. This next one that we're going to get to, 2550, the state agencies that are involved are not happy about the roles that they're being given. Office of Financial Management doesn't want it. to take on the roles that it is laid out. Ecology doesn't want to have to do what they're being asked to do. So everybody was sympathetic with the concepts, but people felt like this was a little bit not a well fleshed out attempt to implement the recommendations. So, based on what I heard there, I would say to say neutral on both of these. And you've got concern and neutral, but there was good arguments on both sides, but I think there's enough concern to stay out of it.
And along the same lines, when briefly read the bill, good intentions, certainly, but the instrument to bring it into the GMA as a brand new element, mandated element of the GMA, may be too tasking. And now including Fish and Wildlife to be the one who approves or not brings another entity to be provide the oversight of that new element, which that created a concern, but if you like, I can change that to neutral, the 2549.
It's up to my seatmates, but that would be my preference based on everything I heard.
Would we be better off opposing it if there's that much concern? I hate to have new, difficult laws passed that are hard to deal with on funded mandates. I'd rather oppose it until they fix it, rather than just stay neutral. If everybody stayed neutral, it might just slip through.
Well, if it remains neutral, any bill,
Yeah, has that.
when it has it gives the appearance, well, they don't care one way or the other, we'll just do something. We'll do what needs to be done. Rather than an opposition, if they see a group, an entity, municipality, lobby, organization member are opposing it, that might be a catalyst to
Fix it.
clean it up. Like you say, flush it out more. Just giving the appearance, well, when the legislature hears, boy, it's supported, that's a green light. Neutral, well, we can go either way. But opposition or concern may raise a yellow caution sign. In my head, I hope that's the reality.
So,
Yeah, I go with the direction of the board. This is just a suggestion.
so
If it's-
would you rather say we're concerned with both of them or something rather than oppose them? Because you don't want to look like you're against Sam either.
Right, and based on what you said, the opinion or the view that the other organizations are taking, I don't like neutral, just like wishy-washy to me.
Yeah.
It's either I like it or I don't, or I'm scared. Or-
I'm fine.
You have exercised the neutral position in many bills. So,
Yeah. What do you think about the word used? Which it's not legal and binding, it's just a word.
Just I'm not going to go beyond neutral because I don't want to send the message that it's not super important that we address the recommendations of the Orca Task Force. So I kind of, you're sending different kinds of messages with the positions, and it's just a matter of what message you want to send. For me, I'm conflicted enough about the way these are structured to stay neutral. It's the kind of thing I would typically want to support, but I can't given what I heard. But I'm not gonna oppose it. I'm not gonna vote to oppose these because they're, as Ramiro said, they're really well intentioned. They're trying to get us. They're trying to move the needle in a positive direction on some really important issues to me. But I'm not ready to say these are the right
How about
policies.
concern?
They're important to me too, and so opposing it might just send the message, and we don't care about it, and I don't want to send that message, but I'm concerned, hopefully that they would question, well, what's your concern?
Yeah, there you go.
So I like concern.
Concern.
Concern?
all on 2549.
2549 and
Yeah.
2550. Is that right?
Yep,
Yeah, both
those
of them.
two are.
Uh, 2570, that is related to managing growth by planning and zoning for accessory dwelling units. It requires some cities and counties, covered jurisdiction planning under the Growth Management Act to adopt 6 specified policies related to accessory dwelling units, ADUs, by July 1st, 2021. So some of the 6 strategies, for instance, is allow at least 1 ADU on all lots located in all zoning districts.
In what?
All.
Oh,
zoning districts that allow for a single-family housing, which may be either located within or attached of the housing unit. Strategy number 2 may not require the provision of an off-street parking for ADU, may not require the owner of a lot with an ADU to live in the ADU or another housing unit on the lot. It may not require a period of continuous ownership before the ADU is constructed, may not charge building permits and plan review fees that exceeds 50% of the amount charged in single-family houses, may not establish impact fees and ADUs, and may not require new or separate utility connection except for circumstances in which the ADU may require.
So those are optional then? It doesn't say shall not or will not, it says may not. You may or may not is how I'm taking that.
Yeah, if this is passes, we have to adopt one of those 6. And let me see, need to adopt the 6 specified policies, those specified policies. So what this bill does provide the umbrella, and then local jurisdictions need to adopt a policy that addresses that umbrella. And what you have before you is 2, the neutral and concern. Our CPED staff has gone through that process, and I believe they have highlighted as a neutral to see how that goes, but WASAC has highlighted as a concern of this bill. And
Is
they,
this going to make it easier to develop an ADU policy so that we can have ADUs to address?
what I believe my read is very prescriptive. So although I think it's good intended legislation, but put sideboards as to what you as a legislative authority has to do.
Who's the sponsors?
The sponsors are Gregerson, Barkas, Roy, Goodman, Peterson, Fitzgibbon, Walsh, Ty, Corey, Markey, Robertson. It's quite a bit. Gilbin, Dolio, Jenkins, Hudgens, Hoff, Frame, Lakehoff, Kloba, Levitt, Irwin, Burnquist,
That's a
Davis,
broad coalition.
Walden.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
so
very
it's
broad,
quite a
yeah.
few. But again, it is just the well-intended, I believe, but too prescriptive because it creates too tight of a sideboards.
We have to make it easier for
Yeah.
our citizens
So-
to deal with those folks out there less fortunate than we are. This is a step in the right direction.
Did you say that those requirements apply to attached ADUs? They do not apply to detached ADUs? That's what I thought I heard you say.
Yes, is detached.
Detached.
Attached. We're required to waive all those rules for an attached.
Yes, attached ADU, thank you, yeah.
I hadn't, there's a lot in there, and I'm with most of those things. I hadn't, when you got to impact fees, I started to be concerned because I hadn't heard that as an element of waiving it. I mean, if you're putting more people, and you're waiving all this stuff to make it easier to build it, but you're waiving impact fees, then you're just doubling back infrastructure costs on yourself that can't really be supported long term. So I have not heard that as an element of any of these ADU plans locally, like Lacey's and stuff that I've been reading about. So I'd have to think about that piece of it.
Yeah.
I generally support most of what's there, though.
I have to say, were you done, sir?
Yeah.
I think that's a broad coalition of individuals, both sides of the aisle,
Yeah.
trying to address housing. And anytime we can cut fees, I think that's beneficial because we're well over 30% of the cost of housing is government regulatory assessment, whether it's in taxes, permits, fees, inspections, whatever it is. So I am an advocate for doing something to address this problem. on the whole homelessness housing issue and affordable housing, I feel all we've done is talking about it. We're not coming up with anything concrete, and I think this is a step in the right direction.
I know there was concern locally and at the state level with the ADUs being used as an Airbnb. And so my question is, when it says may not require the owner to live in or on the property, is if that's an attempt to address that or not. But the overarching question I have is the may nots. That is an option that we can or can't, not you will not or shall not. It says you may require.
At least the concern that I have about this bill is not necessarily about the intent of the policies, because you do have the option that may, is that it's two things. Provides the adoption of the ADU policies are covered jurisdictions are required to implement, for implementation are exempt from appeals under GMA and the State Environmental Policy Act, SEPA. So what it does is this policy mandates that all those policies that you may consider to implement ADUs are exempt for any type of appeals under GMA and any type of appeals under SEPA. And that is the line in which I'm concerned. I'm not against this bill personally, because you're right. I mean, it does provide some elements as to how we can incorporate ADUs in our zoning, and we internally are going through the process of seeing how the ADUs can be part of the comprehensive plan update.
Yeah, that's my concern. I mean, we're doing this. We have our staff working on this. We can adopt any of those elements that we think are right. This is the state telling us we have to do all these things, and it stops the local government from crafting its ADU ordinance to the specifics of its county. We can do all these things ourselves.
No, we can't do ADUs out in the unincorporated area of the county right now, under growth management.
Well, we can't exempt SEPA or the appeals to GMA.
But that doesn't give you the latitude, because planning under GMA management, though the GMA is still applicable. So it doesn't change the requirements of GMA. That's my understanding.
I don't think that's the case, but I mean, I haven't studied it maybe to the depth that you have, but I feel
But they're
that
excited to death. I just could
it's,
wish that I
wow.
could have the time.
it is
in
definitely a step in the right direction, and right now, without changing growth management, we're not going to be able to
So-
allow ADUs in the unincorporated area of the county.
Well, hearing what my seatmate Ty is saying, that we have the authority to do this with the exemption or the exception of exempting SEPA and appeal. But hearing also what my other seatmate Gary is saying, that sells me on it as the broad support of the bill.
Yeah, that's why.
But until I have someone specifically answering these questions, I have a concern.
Well, I know
That's
some
what-
of
that's
the,
where
I
I
know
am.
some of the players, and that's about as diverse as you can get.
Yeah, and strong players.
Why don't we, I mean, can we revisit this next week? I'm happy to look a little closer at
Yeah,
it. I'm just hearing
and-
about it for the first time today. And then we could do a vote next week and see where we're at.
Yeah, and so.
Put that on my list.
And again, the bills are moving quickly, so next week.
Okay.
Let me ask you to put up.
Okay.
When?
Public hearing is today,
There's a committee hearing today.
What time is the public hearing today?
as of 1:30,
Same time we're doing our
3:30.
public health or something, right? What are we doing today at 3:30?
No, 1:30. Didn't you say 1:30?
No, it's 3:30.
Oh.
I was corrected.
Excuse me. Did you say 1:30?
I said 1:30. I was corrected.
Oh, okay, good. I'm just trying to get it
You
right.
heard me well.
Great. Yeah, we're in the Board of Health at that point.
At 3:30, we're in the board of health?
3:30.
At 3 in the afternoon, from 3 to 3:30 this afternoon.
Ask them if they can postpone that. All right.
I'm on it.
Well, we'll see what happens out of the, we'll see what happens out of
Fix
that
it.
hearing today. Yeah, we'll we'll see what happens today. All right, moving along.
House Bill 2614 concerning paid family leave. As you know, a couple of years ago, the legislature passed a paid family leave, which all of us are contributing to that effort. But this bill, it fixes some of the unintended consequences, includes exemptions for casual labor, for those type of covered employment, provides for a private right of action of specific other enforcement provisions, makes changes regarding waiting periods, conditional waivers, and supplementation of benefits and other matters. So it just cleans the bill up, what it was already passed. My suggestion is to support it. House Bill 2620 and Companion Bill, Senate Bill 6411. And this extends the ability for counties planning under the Growth Management Act in all cities to establish residential targeted areas to use the multifamily tax exemption. This is another tool that you may consider in the event you want to have tax exempt properties for those developments that may provide a multifamily component. It is a couple of steps that you need to have. This requires that at least populations of at least 15,000, which we are beyond that. And yeah. So this is just another tool, I believe, for you to exercise. It's not prescriptive. They give you the option to exercise tax exemptions in the event you want to create those exemptions for multifamily dwellings, developments. Senate Bill 6150. Concerning an effective date of certain actions taken under the Growth Management Act. And this bill sets an effective date for actions related to the urban growth areas, agricultural, forest, or mineral resources land, limited areas of more intensive rural development, new fully contained communities or master plan reports. I have to be honest with you, this is a very complicated bill. I just couldn't put my hands around what they intended to be.
WASC opposes it.
WASC is opposing, and staff from CPED has read the bill, and from their perspective, they're concerned about this bill. So I couldn't provide you any specific suggestion.
I would opt for opposing.
And you have no further information on that bill?
Let me read in more detail. What I read didn't make sense to me, but let me read it. The effective date of an action that expands the UGA removes the designation of agricultural, forest, or mineral resources lands, creates and expands the LAMIRD, which is the limited areas of more intensive rural development. Establishes a new, fully contained community or creates or expands this area to at least of the following dates. 60 days after the date of publication of notice of adoption of a comprehensive plan, development regulations or amendment to the plan or regulations modifying on the boundaries of the UGA. If a petition for review to the Growth Management Act Hearing Board is timely filed upon issuance of the board final order. So let me give you the pro and con statements. That may clarify
Okay, that might do it.
The bill is about closing loopholes where developments are vested. This is the pro. The bill is about closing loopholes where development are vested to illegal regulation passed at the time, which are later changed and repealed. This is an extremely disruptive process that should not happen. Currently, if the board overturns, the road management board overturns regulation, the local jurisdictions is unable to undo the permit. This bill does not affect the vested rights doctrine, but rather changes the effective date of the local regulation change. It is an easy way to smooth out loopholes without going into doctrinal issues. The con statement. The presumption in GMA is that the local government's action is valid. Everything in this bill occurs after extensive public notice and involvement. Sometimes there is an administrative action, sometimes an application for a particular project. Either way, the presumption of validity is there. The bill changes how laws and rules are adopted in this state. The bill will make it so that local actions are presumed invalid until approved either by a court or by an elected board. So that's the con statement.
I'm opposed to it. And WASIC is if our staff has concerns, I think they're being polite. And WASIC is just telling it the way it is.
Yep.
I have to get more information from Paul Jewell, the policy director for WASAC, who opposes this. But just based on that, I would oppose it at this point.
I default to neutral when I don't understand the nuances, so I'm just going to stick with neutral myself.
But we have
I
two
can't-
opposing and one neutral?
I don't make any sense of it, so.
Yeah.
6254, protecting public health and safety by enhancing the regulations of vapor products. And this is a follow-up to a resolution that you passed related to the concerns that we have vaping in the county. It requires that all vaping products manufacturers be licensed by the Liquor and Cannabis Board, and requires manufacturers and distributors to submit a list of products ingredients to the Department of Health. Prohibits manufacturer licensees from also holding a retailer or delivery sales license. Permits the LCB to restrict in sales the vapor products if the Department of Health has determined the product may be injurious to human health. My suggestion is for you to support that.
Not like that.
Good.
Senate Bill 6260, that's related to concerning tribal, traditional, and cultural interest. Interest in water resources. The bill allows any Washington tribe to file a description of its historical and current uses of a surface or groundwater body that supports the cultural, spiritual, ceremonial, and traditional rights of lifeways of the tribe with the Department of Ecology. Requires ecology to recognize the tribe's traditional and cultural interest in the water body when the filing is supported by a certain documentation. Requires ecology to consider recognized tribal, traditional, and cultural interest when reviewing various water right applications, and restricts ecology from categorically exempting from the requirements of the State Environmental Protection Act, SEPA, water rights applications. Suggestions to remain neutral on that.
Okay.
6270, and that allows individuals incarcerated in juvenile rehabilitation to request to resolve untried warrants using the Intrastate Detainer Act. You probably know what this is all about, but expands the Interstate Detainer Act to include warrants in district and municipal courts. An individual to request to resolve, is the same. It's really for just juvenile rehabilitation institutions. And WASAC is supportive of that. I really didn't have the chance to check.
Is that
internally.
basically giving them time served in another jurisdiction as credit?
Yeah, and I think it resolves all the outstanding warrants of the other jurisdictions have. Yeah. And I didn't have the chance to have feedback from the county perspective. This is WASAC support.
Jail overcrowding.
And
6292.
revolving door.
Okay, move. Yeah. This prohibits the Department of Ecology from using water banking to allow a person who has not previously made beneficial use of the water to transfer a water right or a portion of a water right into a water bank unless the water bank is created to mitigate water resources impact, creates a source to supply for third parties, or enhance the stream flow, requires a person who purchased a water right separate from the real property to file a copy of the purchase and sale agreement with Ecology. My understanding of this bill is that the Ecology no longer will be able to use the water banking they have used. And this is more of an effect on Eastern Washington. But considering that we are dealing with water rights coming up at this point, suggestion will be to have a concern, because I don't see the impacts to the county as a whole. Maybe neutral will be the best way. Suggestion.
I guess I'd just like to comment on this, that what's going on, corporate interests, or banking interests, I guess is the best way to put it, or financial interests, are purchasing water rights right now with the idea of selling them at some future date to at a heck of a profit. And I don't know enough about it, but I know they're not very happy about it in Eastern Washington.
So my suggestion will be to be neutral on this.
Neutral. Are you neutral or opposition?
Yeah, I mean, I can be neutral.
Neutral, all right.
6093. 6309, I'm sorry. That is related to expand the Farmers Market Nutrition Program, also known as
You missed one
FMNP.
there. 6301.
That's what you already,
So we're talking about 6292.
sorry. I got it there wrong. 6301 allows the Department of Ecology to grant interbasin transfer if it's determined the transfer is consistent with public interest in considering certain factors. So I know for a fact that right now you cannot transfer water from one basin to another. Because that creates a big issue related to wetlands and everything else. This bill, what appears to do is allow for the transfer of water from one basin to another, which could change a lot of our regulations that we have in place. And it will be extremely difficult to monitor and how that transfer from one basin to another will be. So that's what my suggestion on this was a concern.
Okay.
Sorry, thank you for pointing that out.
I'm good for that.
That's fine.
Yep.
So 6309, that is expands the Farmers Market Nutrition Program, also known as FMNP, for Women, Infants, and Children Program participants. And the program itself goes from $28 to $32 in the summer season. if the right appropriation is in place. My suggestion for you to support that. Senate Bill 6313. It is increasing opportunities for young voters. What it does allows persons to vote in the primary election if they are 17 years old, but they will be 18 at the general election. So it expands the opportunity to do that. Also requires the Department of Licensing to provide an automated process for 16 and 17-year-olds to sign to register to vote. They will make it available. It requires the public universities, if requested by the student government, and certain public universities branch campuses, open student engagement centers. So it's really more about reaching out to younger voters to participate on the voting process. My suggestion is for you to support that. 6328, creating a local infrastructure investment program to support the development of affordable housing, workforce housing, and rehabilitation efforts. Allow cities and counties to apply for a remittance of a portion of the state sales tax and use tax on the construction of affordable and workforce housing under the local infrastructure improvement program. In order to access that tax exemption, although that I suggest and support, there is a lot of work and a lot of actions that the legislative authority needs to take. For instance, you need to determine what will be the income threshold that may be considered as affordable housing here in the county. You also, the legislative authority is a requirement to actually define what the workforce housing is. And also the local governments will need to define what the revitalization efforts associated with this effort and the geographic boundaries of this district. So you need to define this district as to what could be access to this sales tax. And again, although there is a cumbersome steps, at least from my perspective, but at least gives you another tool in the toolbox. And that's the reason why, because this is not prescriptive, it's just an option. Support it. The next 6352 eliminates the Energy Facility Site Evaluation Council. And the legislature finds this council certification process undermines opportunities for local review in alternative energy resource facilities. The current process creates an unfair advantage for those facilities that have a special privilege of being able to opt out of the local review process if the local review process reveals local concerns. What it does just eliminate this program, this board in a way, and gives the jurisdiction more latitude as to how you can implement energy resource facilities. Suggestions to support it.
Would that help us with maybe having the wind farm? Would have that helped, do you know?
A wind farm.
That wind farm that chose to develop in Lewis County?
It could be, because it would have brought that conversation to you as opposed to be part of the state. Yeah. Senate Bill 6386 authorizes local government to provide up to a full waiver from impact fees for qualified low-income housing projects without any requirements to pay the acceptance fees from other public funds. And this is the current law, what it is right now. You know, we have not exercised waiving the impact fees that we have in the county, but some cities have. And the requirement right now is that if any waiving of those impact fees, they have to repay back by other funds. And in this case, in some of the cities, the general fund perhaps. This bill eliminates that requirement, that you can go ahead and exempt some of the fees without having the obligation to pay back.
Reduces and eliminates, and/or?
He provides for a full waiver from impact fees.
So you have to reduce them, or you have the option to reduce them? I'm not following.
No, I believe right now the state is, if you exercise the waiving any impact fees to any particular group of individuals, we have not exercised that in the county. You're required to pay that back from other means because it's subsidy.
The county is required to?
Yeah. This appears that the jurisdictions will not be required to do that.
Okay, that's another reason.
6454, this is local habitat recovery planning in critical areas. Directs the Department of Fish and Wildlife to adopt conservation and restoration guidelines to assist county and cities in the preservation and enhancement of, there's a new word, anadromous fisheries?
Anadromous.
Anadromous, thank you. Requires counties and cities to review and update critical area policies and development regulations to implement guidelines. And again, from my perspective, is well-intended legislation, but yet again creates more requirements for the county to comply, particularly when the Department of Fish and Wildlife, it will be another later regulation, and my suggestion is a concern.
I'm good with that.
I'm neutral on that at this point.
Rich?
Yeah, I have concerns. I'm sorry.
So it's 2-1 here. 6461, almost there. Thank you. 6461 amends the timelines for project permit applications for jurisdictions planning under GMA. Requires submission of annual performance reports related to the project's permitted application and a final decision timing by the Department of Commerce and the legislature. This is certainly opposed, because if permitting timelines, then now we have to report to the Department of Commerce and the legislature becomes very burdensome. And I think some of the latitudes that you have, I believe, is related to a level of service in a delivery of services to the citizens, and I believe the legislative authority has the authority to implement what the level of service and services to the citizens will be, as opposed to be prescriptive. Then now we have to submit a report to the Commerce. So my suggestion will be to oppose it.
I'm okay with opposed.
Yep.
And last but not least for now, for this week, 6463, and this prohibits local government planning under GMA from requiring additional environmental analysis or mitigation measures beyond what was previously been completed under the comprehensive planning of certain projects. Prohibits SEPA appeals made during project review in GMA planning jurisdictions. Require GMA planning jurisdictions to determine whether the requirements of environmental analysis and mitigation measures and development regulations and other applicable laws provides adequate mitigation for projects included under GMA. And really this is related to the environmental review that goes through when we go through the update in the GMA, those projects involved. Let me give you additional 6463. That's all I have for you. I thought I have additional information related to this bill.
So,
Okay.
so is this trying to say that if you've put it in your comp plan
Projects,
and it's been reviewed in that context, then you shouldn't have to re-review
you will
it?
not be
when you-
you will not be able to appeal that under SEPA. That's my understanding.
I'm good with your analysis of it.
I'm defaulting to neutral on that because that sounds really complex.
Who are the sponsors on that
I
bill?
agree.
I'm not going to process in 2 minutes.
I agree, neutral pro is the best. Is Senators Wilson, Brown, Muzal, and Becker.
Did you say neutral?
I said neutral because
Concern.
I just need to look at it.
About you?
I said support.
But you had concerns as well?
No,
Neutral.
he's
Neutral.
support. I thought you had a support down there.
I'm changing my
He's changed.
suggestion.
You're trying to be politically correct?
No.
I agree.
When I reread the out loud, it's a lot of stuff.
Neutral.
Is that where we're at?
Thank you.
Thank you, Romero. Any briefing or public hearing decisions pending? No. All right, Commissioners' items. We're going to start with the PHSS update. Welcome, one and all.
Thank you. Good morning again, Commissioners.
Yep, still morning.
Shelley Slatter, Director of Thurston County Public Health and Social Services, and joined to me at the table to brief you on 2019 novel coronavirus is our Division Director at Thurston County Public Health, Jeannie Knight. She's our Division Director of Disease Control and Prevention, and Director Kurt Harden of Emergency Management, who will be sharing with you the pre-hospital and EMS response to this. So, we're just going to give you a real high level, and then we'll answer some questions. We're going to cover today overall information. You received an issue alert last week. You also have a handout from Washington State Department of Health in front of you that we will go over. We'll also share with you the latest situation report information that we have from Washington State Department of Health that we have been working closely with, as well as update you on any new developments that we have. So I'm going to pass this over to Jeannie to kind of kick it off, and we'll go from there.
Good morning. We ended up in this situation on about the 21st of January. What we're looking at is what is considered a novel or new coronavirus. It's important to know that coronaviruses are a large family of viruses that are common among many different species of animals, things like camels, cats, bats, cattle. Rarely does animal coronavirus move from animals to people, but it sometimes does. Know that we know about 7 human coronaviruses. 4 of them have been around since about the 1960s. The other 3, which include things like SARS, which we experienced an outbreak of in 2002, MERS, which we experienced an outbreak of in 2012, and now what is currently called 2019 NCOV is the situation that we're currently dealing with. The 4 other human coronaviruses circulate in the fall and winter all over the country and internationally. So we see cases associated with those oftentimes year-round, and we really believe that everybody experiences one of those at some point in time in their life, that they cause very mild to moderate flu-like symptoms, and the way that we prevent them from spreading in the community is the same way that we do with most respiratory viruses. Where we're at right now in this situation is we've got cases reported in about 16 different countries. There are still only 5 cases reported in the United States, and those are occurring in California, in Washington, Arizona, and Illinois. In Washington State, we've currently got 1 case. We've got 8 individuals that are considered persons under investigation. 4 of those are in King County, 3 are in Snohomish County, and 1 is in Island County. We also have 63 individuals who are being monitored for the illness, actively monitored, and it is what we would do if we have a case identified in Thurston County. We would actively monitor, check in with the individuals on a daily basis while they're under isolation to make sure that they have not developed symptoms. The kinds of things that we would typically talk to the public about to protect the spread of any kind of respiratory disease are what we would want people to do right now, and that is to cover your cough with a tissue or your elbow. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth with unwashed hands. Making sure that you're washing your hands with soap and water frequently. Avoiding close contact with people who are sick. Staying home from and away from others when you're sick yourself. We want to remind folks that it's not too late to get a flu shot this year, and certainly if your physician were to prescribe you antivirals, make sure that you take them.
Just following up from that, Jeannie mentioned the various strains of coronavirus that are common, and what is unusual about this one that started in Wuhan, China, is that we have not seen this before in humans. So we are still learning a lot from it. The CDC is quickly trying to learn and research this, as is Department of Health and all local health jurisdictions, and we're working very closely together to monitor this. You received a report yesterday of a possible case in Thurston County, and due to some information we received from Thurston County Coroner Gary Warnock, the coronavirus that was a cause of death for a specific patient was the common coronavirus that Jeannie just mentioned, not this 2019 novel strain that we are concerned about. So I just wanted to emphasize that. There are no cases in Thurston County at this time. You have the fact sheet in front of you, and that gives you some more information. I think Jeannie covered most of that, how you can prevent it. The symptoms that we look for are following the CDC guidelines, and so that includes fever, cough, difficulty breathing, specifically lower respiratory, such as pneumonia. And many people are able to fight this on their own. The deaths that have occurred in China have occurred in older adults only. So that's what we know thus far. And before I pass it over to Director Hardin to provide you some more information on EMS protocols, do you have any questions for us?
Do you have questions?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Where does that Spanish flu of 1919 fit in this category of illnesses?
You're talking about an influenza virus?
I think it was, yeah.
In opposition to a coronavirus, so it's just a different virus.
So it's not, none of the ones you're referring to either are flu, you mentioned flu-like.
They're not
Symptoms.
influenza, but the symptoms for this are very similar.
Okay,
to
so there's no
influenza.
connection to that
No.
type of a virus, okay.
You have a question?
You mentioned flu shot, but that's not going to help with this
It
novel.
won't help with this, however, it will help your physician should they need to test you for other types of virus. And we always recommend at this time of year, we've still got a lot of influenza circulating out in the community.
So if there was a person that was going to be quarantined or isolated, is that voluntary? Or can they still go to the supermarket or the movies?
It entirely would depend upon whether we were talking about isolation or quarantining. We isolate individuals who are sick, we quarantine people who are well, and it would depend upon what kind of exposure they had and whether they were exhibiting symptoms or not.
So quarantine is mandatory?
It can be. We certainly have the ability under law to quarantine people, or the health officer does.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Oh,
Which of our, if we need advice about this, which of our interim health officers would be responsive to this?
Dr. Kathy Lofi is the state health officer, as well as Dr. Scott Lindquist, who is working with us and working specifically on the 2019 coronavirus. I will say that the state has activated their incident command, and we, again, are participating in that as needed, as are our staff, and working closely with them. So all the information that we're sharing with you has been approved or developed by our health officer.
good.
Good morning. Kurt Harden again, Director of Emergency Services. I'm going to talk a little bit about emergency management and EMS on both sides. First thing I'd like to say is public health has the lead, but we are definitely in support of what public health is doing, and our staffs are working very closely together. The state Emergency Operations Center is activated to a level 1. That's their highest activation level. For this, they have as already mentioned by Director Slaughter, a health incident management team up there. They've activated, either have or will activate in the next several days, 2 multi-agency coordination groups. One will be strictly for federal and state agencies to coordinate resources. The second one will be state public health and local public health agencies within the state of Washington. And what the purpose of a multi-agency coordination group, or what we call a MACG, is to coordinate resources when there's something where it may have more requests than resources available. And so this is all preparedness based on the current situation, but they're getting prepared. It's not a reflection of response at this point. Also, I'd like to talk about on the EMS side what our providers are doing for pre-hospital patients. In essence, when somebody calls 911 with a medical situation or emergency, our providers, approximately 600 providers in Thurston County, EMTs and paramedics, the guidance we put out to them is their PPE should include gloves, goggles, and N95 masks. The only addition to that is N95 masks, which all the fire agencies and private ambulance companies should have available. So that should not be anything that's new or out of the ordinary for them. The other piece is we've given them, based on public health's criteria, the guidance that if they come across a patient that's exhibiting the viral symptoms that have already been described by public health, and they recently traveled to China, then we immediately have them do the following. First of all, they take down the information of all those present, both first responders and friends and family who may be in the vicinity of the patient. Second thing they do is they notify the base station hospital, which is Providence St. Peter's. Then they transport the patient as directed by medical control, which is Providence St. Peter Hospital. And then they are required to notify their chain of command at either the private ambulance company or the fire agency, notify Medic 1, notify public health, and that's to provide all the information for follow-up. And then turn over the list of names that they've collected of all first responders and those standby people who are in the vicinity, to public health so they can start their process. And we've also given them direct information to contact public health directly with the contact numbers public health has provided us. So, and then the last thing is, because it takes a period of time for test results to come back, they will then decontaminate any transport unit that transported the patient to Providence St. Pete or wherever they were directed to transport the patient. They will decontaminate that unit prior to bringing it back into service. The other thing last thing I'd like to say is this is a very dynamic and fluid situation, has already been mentioned. As an example, while we were in this meeting, I got notified of a statewide conference call for local emergency management jurisdictions that takes place at 1 o'clock this afternoon. We've invited Public Health to sit in on that call with us, because what we're trying to do is ensure that the information we hear is the same that Public Health is hearing and vice versa, because we want to make sure that we're on the same sheet of music, so to speak. And then the last one is that I got a call Sunday. So we already started working with Public Health last week and their staff. I got a call Sunday from State Emergency Management, and one of the things they requested is that we talk to our Public Health Department. I had to inform them we already were doing that, and we had a good working relationship. But that may not be the case across the state. So you may hear other situations, but that's definitely not taking place here in Thurston County. We're working very well together.
Going back, way back, HIV, hepatitis, tuberculosis, all the different things throughout the last 30 or so years, 40 years. There's always been specific training for health department employees who come into contact, corrections officers in close proximity and closed environment, sheriff deputies going in and out of homes. Is there going to be, is it the same type of protocol that would kick in for this virus? And will the sheriff's department or corrections get additional training or exposure, not exposure in the true sense, but indoctrination into this world of this information to calm or their fears or concerns going in and out of people's homes? And or for your 1 o'clock meeting, should the sheriff or undersheriff be a part of that? I don't know. I don't want to exclude anybody that comes into close. They don't have a higher propensity to come into contact with it.
What I would say is when we send our communicable disease updates out to provide our community partners with information about how best to respond to these types of situations, they certainly are included in that list. I'm not certain how far they distribute the information once they receive it, but we're certainly open to speaking with anyone from the sheriff's office about it, or any of the law enforcement offices.
Okay, well, I know you're open to speak with them. I want to be sure information gets to them. You know, men and women in that field are going to have questions and concerns, as we all do. I want them to know what it is and what it isn't.
Yes, and I also just wanted to share for anyone who has any questions about this that they can visit our website. We also have an information line. We are on call to respond 24/7 and working closely with Department of Health as a statewide, across the state to ensure that we're getting those common messages out and that information is widely available also on the DOH website. And the hotline that people can call if they have questions, thank you, Jeannie, is 1-800-525-0127. And I'll see if Kurt has anything to add.
And to answer your question about what I think was decontamination of coming into contact, we still, the guidance we have out to EMS providers, I think it's the same across the board, is it's a virus, so therefore wash your hands. Do all those prudent activities. But if there's something that raises the level of that could be the coronavirus that we're dealing with here 2019, and those questions are, have you traveled recently? Do you have the viral-like symptoms? Is it deeper in your lungs, such as the pneumonia? Then that's where we bring the providers in and start that monitoring process, and public health starts going through that area as well. So I don't think there's going to be additional training or information regarding that. It's just the same information we put out. Wash your hands, take the prudent precautions.
Same protocol, okay. Anything else?
Do all the folks that have a possibility of interacting with somebody that's come down with this, do they all have masks and hand sanitizers and that type of thing readily available to them so we don't have to try and issue it out if something happens?
Well, know that one of the things that is happening is as people return from out of country, they are being provided information, things that they can do and things that they need to watch for as they come into country. The systems that are currently in place, one of the things that we certainly talk to individuals about when we do the monitoring of them is the types of facilities that they have available and what's available for them to make sure that they're following good personal hygiene practices. So there is a huge amount of work being done out there.
I guess my concern is for the employees, our employees, that are going to be in some fashion interacting with a potential sick person. Do they all have masks and little hand sanitizer things? I don't know, aerosol spray to spray the
We
interior
follow,
of their...
at least from the health department's perspective and our staff, anybody that we would send out to potentially actively monitor would have appropriate PPE.
Even corrections officers or deputy sheriffs or...
Yeah. I cannot answer for corrections officers or deputy sheriffs, but I can talk to EMS personnel do have the appropriate PPE, hand sanitizers, because this is the same guidance we give them to any sick patient that they come in contact with, whether it's the influenza, whether it's just the cold. Same concept, wash your hands, take the appropriate precautions, but they do have that equipment as part of their PPE issue to them.
Is there some kind of an aerosol spray that can be used, for an example, if you find out somebody you transported in a vehicle, for an example? So you can just kind of set it off, close the door, or something like that. And could you pass this on, at least to the sheriff's office, for preparatory position, I guess, so just in case, I guess that's what we're talking about, is just in case, are we prepared so we don't have to run to the drugstore and buy sanitizer and masks and stuff? Do we have all that on hand for all our county employees that might be exposed? That's my concern.
I am not certain from the sheriff's perspective whether they have that kind of equipment. We certainly can talk to them about it. It would be no different than we would want folks to do in their own homes. If you've got a respiratory illness that is running through your family, we'd want you to make sure that you clean and sanitize surfaces. And there's all kinds of information available on our website about appropriate sanitizing solutions, but the packets of hand sanitizers are certainly available and would be easy enough for.
We will proactively reach out to Thurston County Sheriff's Office to ensure that they have this information, to ask them if they have any questions. And we will also, when we speak with our health officer and participate in any of the coordination groups or calls, we will ask if there is other guidance other than what we have shared today being shared with other statewide law enforcement agencies. But at this time, broad masking of the general public or personnel is not being advised.
No, and that's where I was going to go, was who is going to do it? I know we can and we should. Who is going to do it? And so thank you for saying that. Someone will reach out to them and make sure they get this fact sheet too, please.
And I want to address the last question you had about decontaminating of apparatus or units. This would be no different than if we had a patient that had a trauma patient. You have blood products inside the back of a transport unit. They do the same decontamination, the same procedures would apply.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No? Thank you guys for working together and being on top of this for us.
And protect us.
Yes, thank you. I just want to emphasize, I'm really proud of the amazing professionals that we have throughout the county, both emergency management and in public health, and Thurston County is in excellent hands.
So moving on, Offutt Lake.
Yes. Thank you very much, Director
Thank you.
Hartman
Thank you,
and Jeannie.
Thank you.
So this, we had an exciting week last week. So you also received an issue alert from our department regarding a boil water notice from the Washington State Department of Health for Offutt Lake Resort. Located in Tenino, for anyone that doesn't know, and it includes, the resort includes a restaurant called Lady of the Lake, Offutt Lake Resort Grocery, and an RV park and some residences. This particular water system is under the jurisdiction of Department of Health because it is a Group A water system. But our department has been providing support to Department of Health and to the Offutt Lake Resort owners during this response, and that includes testing of water samples. So our water lab that's located here has been providing testing for samples, and including extending our hours and availability to do that for the community, as well as our food inspection staff that went out to the restaurant, which is closed because of the boil water notice, which is a result of DOH's investigation, which found fecal coliform, or also known as E. coli, in the water supply. And this E. coli can make people sick, and is especially of concern for those with weakened immune systems. So this boil water notice remains in effect. The restaurant is still closed. The most recent samples that we have received here at our lab have been negative, which is good. They've received guidance from both Department of Health and our staff on how to flush their water system and get back into full operations. The store is open, and there is no food prep or anything there, any concern there. And the restrooms are closed at this time of year to the general public. So the community has been notified, and really a pleasure to work with during a stressful time. And I'm here to answer any questions that you may have about this.
Before we get to questions, just to be clear, Offutt Lake has a Tenino address, but it's not in Tenino. It's in the
Thank you, sir.
unincorporated part of the county.
Yes, that is correct.
Questions?
So this problem is in the water system.
Yes,
This is a
that's correct.
groundwater system. It's not, we're not talking about Summit Lake where they're pulling water from the lake.
No, that's correct.
So we don't know the source or the cause.
I don't have any information about that, but we can certainly get you more information. I don't know what the source of the E. coli bacteria
I mean,
was.
this is the first time since I've been on the board and for a year that this has come up in a groundwater system. How common is this, and what is usually the cause of such a thing? If there's a...
And we're looking to find the cause.
Right. Unfortunately, I do not have that specific information, but I'll get you the answer to that
Okay,
question.
thank you.
How many residents are served by this water system out there?
I'm not exactly sure. What I do know is there are 46 water connections out there, and I'm not sure how large the community is. I don't think I have that in the information here with me today.
But is that to the campsites, or is that to individual owned lots?
That includes the RV sites, the residences, the restaurant, and the grocery store that's located in that community
But
area.
just on that local property right there?
Yes, yes.
So it doesn't extend out to other properties where there's homes or anything?
No.
That's Highway 99.
Just to that specific Offutt Lake Resort community.
Do you know, is it a well system?
I am so sorry, sir. I do not have that that information.
I might just point out, having had something to do with water systems, sometimes there's been things like happen where a fill station for a dog bowl, for an example, has a hose going down in it, and then if that is any way, I mean, if the pressure's been released on the system somewhat, and that's up higher than the down below for a minute, it can siphon a little bit. So that could be the problem. I mean, there's just a lot of variables that come into what the problem could be.
How does something like that how does it first get detected? How is it, by what means is it like, okay? know
This,
that this is a problem.
yes, this particular community is monitored by Washington State Department of Health. So we received the report from Department of Health. So they went out and did a routine inspection, I believe. And do testing and found these results. And then we, at our local water lab here in Thurston County, have provided subsequent sample tests for them.
So it came from a routine test, not someone getting sick.
Yes,
And-
that is correct, as far as I know. We did not receive any reports of illness from Offutt Lake Resort.
And again, that's under the auspices of Washington Department of Health, the State Department of Health,
Washington
not
State
county.
Department of Health, not
Board of
Thurston
Health.
County Public Health.
Thank you.
Usually the cure on this is like a bleach solution that they put throughout the whole system, but they have to go around and open up every tap
Spigot.
that's affected, so they get every pipe cleaned out.
The advisory that we have here to residents who are in that community from Washington State Department of Health is do not drink the water without boiling it first. Bring all water to a rolling boil for 1 minute, let it cool before using. And it states that boiling kills the bacteria and other organisms in the water, and that boiled or purchased bottled water should be used for drinking, making ice, brushing teeth, washing dishes, and food preparation until further notice.
All right. Any more, Gary?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Shelley.
The Emergency Alert System Plan.
Yeah, Kirk Harding is going to provide an update on this particular plan. Shouldn't take that long.
Good morning again, Kurt Harden, Director of Emergency Services. I'm here to talk about the update to the Emergency Alert System Plan for Thurston and Mason counties. This is a recurring update that takes place, and the Emergency Alert System is a national alerting system that provides emergency information from national, state, and local government entities to the general public through radio and television broadcasts when time is of the essence. Activations will include initial actions the public should take to prevent injury or loss of life. And then I would like to point out that this is just one of a number of methods we use to communicate information to the public. There's not a single method or tool that we use to alert the public, which is why multiple methods are utilized. These include TC Alert, which is Thurston Community Alert, wireless emergency alerts, which you receive over your cell phones, emergency telephone notification, mass email, social media, and dynamic messaging signs. Notifications for hazards can include volcanoes, severe weather, flood, hazardous materials release, earthquakes, and other incidents. You may see that tests for the EAS are conducted periodically on TV, radio, and cable channels. Those tests can be weekly or monthly, but they're prescribed in the EAS plan. The Mason-Thurston EAS plan was created by the local Emergency Communications Committee, and it's comprised of representatives from city and state government, local broadcasters, and 911 centers. It will become, and this Thurston County and Mason-Thurston County plan will become part of the state EAS plan. The Washington State Emergency Communications Committee is responsible for the state plan and administration of the plan at the state level. The purpose of the plan is to provide policies and procedures for government officials and local broadcasters to transmit emergency information using the EAS system and spells out the authority, training requirements, testing requirements, limitations, and maintenance of the system. The plan also addresses redundant capabilities in the event Thurston County is unable to send an EAS message using TC Alert. Redundant capabilities include using the backup system at TCOM, having Mason County issue the alert, having State Emergency Management issue the alert, or RAVE transmit a message on Thurston County's behalf. And then the part of the plan, Annex B, addresses the Thurston County specifically and addresses who is authorized to send alerts, the process for requesting that they be sent, and which broadcasters in the area retransmit them. As a result of this update, one of the things we've discovered is we need to be more inclusive in who can access or authorize EAS messaging within the county. Right now, it rests at TCOM level and emergency management. One of the areas is, as an example, the sheriff department. The sheriff is responsible for evacuation within a county or jurisdiction, and we don't, while we would not say no to Sheriff Snaza, It doesn't specifically authorize Sheriff Snaza to come in and direct an EAS message for evacuations, as an example, for either flooding, fire, or other situations. So one of the areas we're going to update next is the Annex B of the Thurston Mason EAS plan, because that specifically details within our area who's authorized to send those notifications.
Questions, comments?
No, good.
I'm neutral.
Concerned.
If you're neutral,
Always concerned.
yes, I was going to say, if you're neutral, then that's a win, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. And the next step will be to, for myself to sign this as a director, and then it'll become part of the state's plan.
Great, thank you, Kurt. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kurt.
ERP report.
This is a follow-up to the conversation you had a couple of weeks ago, and also the direction that you provided to staff to go ahead and process a bond that you will be authorizing for the purchase of two major IT systems. One is the ERP, and the other one is the replacement of Amanda system. So Robin and Dennis,
Thank you.
and Brian can come and
Thank you.
to give you a little more in detail about who the potential, how you call the potential vendor who could provide the services. The apparent successful
vendor.
It's like, yeah,
Successful vendor.
of the ERP system.
So good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
I'm on point for this one.
Okay.
So as you know, we've been working for more than a year now on the procurement of a ERP. And over the last few months, we had a large evaluation team that had representatives from almost every office and department of experts in finance and HR, doing a rigorous evaluation of the proposals. We elevated 3 vendors with their partner implementation teams, and each of those vendors did 3-day demonstrations of what their product could do for Thurston County. We elevated 2 of those who came in and went through a discovery process with us, answered a lot more questions. And we do have an apparent successful vendor. And what the evaluation team is recommending is Oracle software with Sierra Cedar as the implementer. And they believe that that would be the best fit for the county. The current proposal would replace our finance, payroll, HR, budget, asset management systems. We have a potential for replacing the CAMS system. There's going to be new capacity for grant and contract management and enhanced fleet management. This is really a huge benefit to our county. What we're asking you for is authorization to continue on this process to negotiate the price and scope. The current proposal from Sierra Cedar is going to cost the county $6.7 million over 5 years. The bulk of that is for implementation in 2020 and 2021. That's estimated to be 4.8 of that $6.7 million. Our ongoing license and system maintenance costs are about $50,000 more than we currently pay, so ongoing costs are not a lot more than current license and maintenance fees for our current systems. It's just that upfront implementation cost that has a big price tag. One of the things that we've been doing is contracting with GFOA, the Government Finance Officers of America Association. They have provided invaluable guidance through the bidding and selection process, and they've actually done a lot of the work to help us evaluate. They had tools that they used that brought certain things to light. They helped us know what questions to ask. And we would like to continue to use their services throughout implementation to ensure that this is a successful project. This is probably the largest IT project that the county has ever attempted to implement. And it affects every office and department in such essential ways that we need to set ourselves up for success. So part of what we're asking for is authorization to extend the contract with GFOA, and that cost will be an additional $250,000. So what we're asking, I'm not asking for a decision today. I want to answer your questions, and Dennis and Brian are here to help me do that. But what we're asking for next Tuesday is your authorization to negotiate a contract on scope and final price and to extend the contract with GFOA.
Do you have anything to add before we get to questions?
It's been a very collaborative
Okay, use the
process.
microphone, Brian.
I'm sorry.
Hey.
It's just been a very collaborative process with stakeholders from almost all departments and offices that have been involved with this. So it's been really neat to see the synergy of that and working with GFOA as well. So
Beautiful. Question?
So when we were talking about the bonds, we were talking about this system and the Amanda system.
That's right.
And so how much more is the Amanda system going to cost on top of, this is 7 million.
That's right.
Yeah, so tentatively, right now, we have an estimate for the Amanda replacement of 1.5 million.
So now we're at 8.4.
Well, there's funds we've collected some for the Amanda replacement already, as well as ERP replacement.
So there's a little bit of money in the reserve account, not nearly what we need, and the proposal was to issue 8 million in bonds.
And we still think that's what we need to cover all
Yes.
this.
And we're in the process for the Amanda system of we're going to use a similar process. These are all very business-driven applications, so the business is really guiding what we need, developing our requirements. So we're getting that group together to start developing what the RFP is going to look like. And I'm also looking for it's not GFOA, but it's a GFOA-like company if we end up wanting to use another third party, because as Robin said, having a third party at the table when you're dealing with that vendor who has this experience really goes a long way in these massive projects, and they're almost running like a QA for you as well, making sure that you're asking the correct questions, getting the right pricing. You don't know what you don't know a lot of times, and they've already been through this a lot of times.
Okay, Gary.
The project itself looks like it's probably going to eat up about $8 million that you're talking about, I guess.
Yeah.
And by the time these bonds are paid off, what's the total cost to the taxpayers? Is it like 12 million or?
So our bond advisor is running those numbers now. I had a conference call with them last Friday, and they are preparing some preliminary estimates for us. One of the, we're only going to bond these for 10 years because that is the useful life of a system. But I'll have those numbers for you very soon. And I can tell you what the total cost over 10 years will be based on an $8 million bond issue. We're talking about bundling that bond issue with bonds for the construction of the jail expansion project. And there's also an opportunity, and they're calculating the numbers on this, for refunding some of our current bonds at a lower interest rate. So there may be some savings that we can get there. So there's a number of things going on with the bond issue.
And do we have some bonding issues that are going to be paid off in the near future so that we won't be continually compounding, stacking on, if you will, but at some point, something pays off and something else pays off a few years later. Is there a staggered process there that we're benefiting from?
There is something of a staggered process. It's the payment of some of the REIT 1 bonds in the near future that creates the capacity to pay for the jail expansion. So that's one thing that's going to be going away, and then we'll be able to pay for the jail. We currently have very little bonding in general fund. It's almost, I want to say it's almost nothing. It is, I think it's about 200,000 a year in bond payments.
So we're
in the
pretty
general
healthy in
fund.
that regard.
We are extremely healthy in that regard. So I'd have to look and see when our other bonds are coming due. That's information that's easy for me to find.
How about where are we at with law enforcement to include the jail as far as being part of this system and gaining some efficiencies? Is there a connection there? I know some years back we tried to connect up with Olympia, Lacey, and Tumwater from a law enforcement perspective, and we didn't have the resources to do it before your time, I'm sure. But.
So that's a case management system, and actually I've talked to the sheriff about that at some point in the last 10 years. It seems like it was about 3 or 4 years ago we had that conversation. This ERP, of course, would not be a case management system, but we could certainly look and see if we need to be setting money aside for that type of a system in our large IT reserve, or if we're successful at getting either of these large systems for a little less than we think they'll cost us, if that creates capacity in the bond revenue, then maybe we could look and see what we could do there. What this is not going to do, we talked about this, none of the systems that we looked at have the sophisticated time management that law enforcement needs for the complicated shift assignment that you're very familiar with.
Yeah.
Neither of these systems can manage that. The sheriff has a relatively new time management system that does meet their needs. We would not be replacing that. We would create a connection between the systems so that they can talk to each other. But there's no ERP out there that has that very sophisticated time management.
Is this a closed system? And what I'm specifically referring to is the potential for hacking and those type of interruptions that take place when the public can access. So I don't know if it is or not. I don't know that much about it.
It's cloud-based. Oracle has high-level security that is going to meet all of our security requirements. And we believe that by being cloud-based, we've got a better chance of systems that are continuously up, and our information will be saved in a way that it'll be available in the event of a disaster. So that's a benefit.
And I guess if there's a good side of this, the interest rates are down for this type of activity?
That's exactly right. The interest rates are pretty low right now.
So I have a question. Everybody in the county, each department pays into this?
Yep.
Into the fund? That includes the sheriff, prosecutor, everybody?
Everybody.
Everybody.
Yep,
Okay,
and
good.
this system will benefit everybody.
All right. Any other questions, last-minute questions that
Just
are
one
vital?
real quick.
Go ahead.
Real quick, last minute. I heard you say something about you're hoping somebody else is able to work with you on that. Does that mean you have to go out for another bid?
No.
No.
That's all done,
No,
okay.
it's Oracle software, and they have an implementation entity called Sierra Cedar. Now, there is part of, this brings in kind of an umbrella thing. So there is another vendor who does the fleet, I want to say, is that? AssetWorks. But that is all under this umbrella, and there will probably be at least 2 contracts, if not 3, and the contract with GFOA. But we negotiate a single price for the ERP.
Very nice.
Yep,
Yes.
one single proposal.
Most of the very big software suites, the companies have an implementer that does the customer engagement portion of it.
Okay. Got to end it. We have a lot to cover
Yeah.
still in the
So
planning session.
a couple of steps that might be coming your way, they will be coming your way, is when staff has negotiated the contract and the price, they will come back asking for a recommendation for authorization to sign the contract, and also will come back with a recommendation for you to issue bonds, and
Okay.
that is procedural. So two main actions
Right.
related to this.
So I need a thumbs up,
Yep.
either today or Tuesday on.
When ready to move on the two
On the-
statements that I made.
Okay. Robin, Dennis, Brian, thank you very much.
Are you okay, Commissioner?
Yes,
Looks like we're a go on this. Yes, good. Thank you.
I don't have to like it though, do I?
No,
All right, planning session agenda.
Yeah. So I just want to review with you the agenda for the planning session that is scheduled this Friday from 9 in the morning to 4:30, and that will be located on the Thurston County Public Works Campus, 9605 Tiller Road, South and Suite C. A special meeting notice has been placed. And what I have for you, and I probably ask Rick to come and be part of this conversation, is three major elements of this work session. One is the related to the courthouse and administrative building. And we're going to be approaching the conversation on two different paths. Plan A, assuming the ballot measure for April 28 before the vote is successful, and it will walk you through what is it that we need to do in preparation to that become. So Rick is going to walk you through some of the project delivery methods, some of the milestone schedules, if that is successful, some of the connection with the City of Olympia, and having a conversation how the Sheriff's Office will fit within the whole plan if that is successful. Then we'll move into what we call a Plan B, and that will be if the ballot measure fails. Then we need to start having a conversation, at least have in mind as to what is it that we need to do. We'll walk you through some of the current space needs as well as the current space needs and the desirable space needs. And for the next 10, 15-year projections, we'll walk you through as to what the court versus non-court spaces will be. So start diluting that information or splitting that information for you. And then we'll walk you through some of the building condition assessment reports, and then we'll get into that conversation as to the options. Lease space, renovation, new construction, older funding. So all that should be part of that conversation as we move along into this. And again, I'm personally, I don't expect to have any hard decisions at that point, but it's worth to have those conversations with you, and hopefully that will shed a light as to what else we need to do from the staff level to support that, those decisions. The next item that I have for you is the 2021-2022 budget process, upcoming biennium, and the key elements of that is having a conversation with you about what your philosophy of the upcoming biennium budget will be, and talk about the approach and the process as a whole, as well as Robin walk you through the calendar, but she has perhaps more information at this point.
I would like to add a third item for the budget process, and that is revenue opportunities.
Okay, very good.
Where do you want to add that? Under what?
Under budget process, number 3 would be revenue opportunities.
And then if there is time, it will be a commissioner's items,
All right.
if the time allows. But I think it's a well-packed agenda. It will be a working lunch, and we'll provide lunch for you.
Who will be part of the Plan A and B presentations? Rick? Just you? You're so lucky. Okay.
Are we going to discuss, Robin, you've mentioned a couple of times bringing a proposal about reserve policy. Is that
Yes.
something that we're going to discuss Friday?
Yes, I can have that on Friday.
Yeah, under budget.
I can have a draft on Friday. Yeah,
So that's going to be in there too? Where is that going to be?
that can be under the revenue, or we can make it a separate item.
Let's
Okay.
have a separate item, just to
All
make sure.
right,
So it's,
reserve policy.
reserve fund policy.
Is there anything you want to add or prep us for? Well, we have just a couple of minutes for Friday.
I'll just tell you, I'm very excited about the prospects going forward. I've had a lot of interaction of the construction and design community reaching out to me, asking what's going on and how they can participate. And so I'm real excited just to share with you what I'm hearing from the industry and what our plans could be going forward should the bond measure or the levy pass. I think it looks real positive.
So now that the folks are listening to everything you're saying, will you tell them who you are?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Rick Thomas. I'm the Special Project Coordinator for the Courthouse Project.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
No, sir.
About Friday?
No.
Concerns?
Sounds good to me.
Packed
I thought that would take 15, 20 minutes.
No. Hopefully not.
That's wonderful. Looking forward to it. Anything regarding, thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
Anything regarding public testimony?
Yeah, and I'd just like to distribute a letter that you received on your email yesterday from Mr. Pettit. This is related to the courthouse project, and what he's outlining is pretty much the steps that I'm outlining for you to consider taking at the next Board of County Commissioners meeting, meaning refining the ballot title and putting some specifics on what needs to go to the auditors before the ballot. Also, in this letter, he's suggesting that perhaps you consider using the language that he's proposed for the ballot measure. And anyways, that's what I have for you on that one. So I will address this afternoon. The gist of his letters is of this letter is going to be addressed for you to consider formal actions next Tuesday. Also, this morning you receive a letter from Mr. Pettit, and there's a little bit. I'm just giving my perspective. It's related to a permit that he's represented a property owner. The development is the Faith Harvest Helpers. Mm-hmm. He has submitted a letter to you. It's in your inbox. I would like you to exercise caution on this because this particular application can come to you as a potential appeal, you as a quasi-judicial. So I just want to leave it like that. It is in your inbox, and it is up to you whether you want to read that letter or not. But again, keep in mind that this has a potential that could come to you as through an appeal, as you as a quasi-judicial.
So should he want to address the board in public comment, he ought not talk about this because it's a land use permit issue that may come up before the board.
And his email to you this morning, he stated that perhaps he's going to do that this evening.
Do what?
Provide public testimony related to this.
Faith Harvest Helpers?
Yeah.
And that was part of the email. You haven't spoken with him about this.
No, I'm just reading the
So I'll emphasize that this evening then. But should he start speaking to it?
For me, it's
I
just
would
to
remind him.
For me, it's just to give you some suggestion as to how you need to be cautious, because if this could come to you as a potential appeal.
Okay. Yeah.
My concern is if we interject our objection on anything to any citizen, that we end up with a free speech infringement issue. So I don't know where the board wants to go. I mean, I know these things are aggravating, but I don't want to be involved in limiting anyone's free speech on any topic. And I know we give direction and no cussing and be polite and all that, but I just don't know where we're at legally on this issue.
And one of the instructions is, to even the citizens to be cautious.
I know.
About any potential permits. So But you're absolutely correct. I mean, where you draw the line, or where
Yeah.
you define the
Well,
line of,
I'm not going to go up and have the microphone turned off, nor am I going to put a gag on someone that violates these things to the extent that we're talking about. But I would caution him again about that remark, but I'm not going to stop him from it. I can't physically stop him from doing it. So he still has that right, but I will caution him that any matter that could eventually come before us could be compromised. And just let him know up front, it could be compromised. Remarks about pending land use permits
You do.
or similar matters that could eventually come before the Board on Appeal are not welcomed. But I can't stop him from talking.
Robin, some additional information, has some additional information.
So this question has come up in the past, and Elizabeth's advice is for us to stop someone if they're giving information or making statements that would then make it impossible for the board to function in their quasi-judicial capacity on an appeal. So if someone is speaking about a permit, it is your right to say, please don't talk about that in this setting. Elizabeth has further told us that there is no requirement for the board to have public comment periods. You want to do it, of course, but you're not required to. So the concept of free speech and someone saying anything they want is limited by, the other laws about electioneering. That's why they can't speak to campaign issues. This thing that would put you in a role to not exercise, or in a position to not exercise your role. These are things that I'm remembering advice from Elizabeth. So I would just suggest that you might want to talk to her if you're concerned about what people should or shouldn't say in the boardroom.
But if he's talking to it and I up front give that admonition or the guideline, he violates it, and I again stop him and remind him, but he continues, what is the process then? We've now heard stuff from him, whatever amount it is, and should that come to the board then on appeal, what happens? Do we all recuse ourselves, or is it just, what happens?
Elizabeth would have to advise you on that. But in my experience in the past, prior boards have shut people down who are talking about things that they shouldn't be talking about.
Yeah, but how do they do that? By eventually warning and warning, and then
They
gavel?
we cannot talk about that, stop. It was very direct,
Okay.
is what I recall.
Perhaps he needs to know ahead of time, should he want to do that, not to do that.
I can't do that.
I'm not asking you to it, I'm just saying perhaps.
Yeah, I cannot approach any citizen and give him some parameters as to what the testimony will be.
I get that, I'm not asking you to. Go ahead.
Will Elizabeth be there to give us advice on the spot when something goes haywire? I mean, she's our representative.
Yeah, I think she's planning to attend this evening, but I will give her a heads up.
If not her, someone else that could attend? If she's our only legal representation and we have no one there, that's not acceptable.
That happened in Lacey, where an individual I won't name was testifying about the courthouse, and the mayor shut him down, and the attorney was asked for an opinion and backed that decision up, is my understanding. So it's useful to have the attorney there to
very useful
to respond and give that sort of opinion about the specifics of the situation.
I will give Elizabeth a heads up.
Okay.
I mean, I just think that anytime any board, whether it's Lacey or us, I think it leaves yourself open for criticism, but we're open for criticism all the time.
Oh, you bet.
But on a free speech issue, that's one of the issues that are kind of bugaboo issues that are kind of gray. And
I don't
I mean, it's,
I don't think
thanks for being
The chair,
Well, I don't think it's gray if what anybody's going to do at public comment is going to limit or impede our future decision-making in a quasi-judicial role. Nobody has the right to hamper the government like that. So I don't take that personally, we're limiting free speech. We're saying, don't talk about this because it could come to us. And so I have no problem doing that. But it'd be nice to have a legal opinion right then and there.
Yeah.
So I don't have to turn to Commissioner Menzo. So now what?
I'm not active right now.
It would be nice to have that, or to have her there for that reason. And I don't see that as limiting free speech. I see that as, no, you can't impede the government's role in what we're charged with doing. You can talk about anything else if you want to say nasty stuff without being, vulgar, or go beyond 3 minutes. That's limiting free speech, but I don't have a problem with that last one.
You can tell the commissioners they're awful people.
Yeah, every day.
Yeah.
We don't
hear it every
limit
day.
that.
Right. Anything else?
No.
Anything else?
Are we on commissioners' items?
Nope, we're on lunch.
Oh, okay.
Anything else? Anything else?
Good.
Nope, okay.
Good.
We're adjourned. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.